Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing HFY stories. Hit the bell icon to get notified about our latest uploads. In the far reaches of space, where starlight flickered like distant dreams, humanity's reach had expanded beyond the boundaries of Earth. The year was 2279, and the Intergalactic Peace Accord had made communication between species possible, though trust was still fragile. Among the stars, humans had encountered many civilizations, some welcoming, some hostile, but none had left an impression quite like the Valorians. The Valorians were a race of tall, ethereal beings with shimmering, translucent skin that changed colors with their moods. Their homeworld, Valoris, was a planet bathed in perpetual twilight, with sprawling forests that glowed in iridescent hues. The Valorians were known for their advanced technology and their ability to communicate through thought, a gift that allowed them to transcend verbal language. But it was their unique cultural view of love, boundless, eternal, and fearless, that intrigued humanity the most. Captain Evelyn Sharp, a seasoned officer of the United Earth Coalition's flagship Elysium, had spent years navigating the political complexities of intergalactic diplomacy. Yet, even she could not have prepared for the encounter that awaited her in the Zeta 9 system. The Elysium had been tasked with a routine diplomatic mission, meeting the Valorians to discuss trade and peace. What was expected to be a simple meeting turned into something neither of them could have anticipated. As the Elysium approached the Valorian cruiser, a sleek, silver vessel that seemed to blend seamlessly into the stars, Evelyn couldn't shake the sense of awe that filled her. The Valorians were unlike any species humanity had ever encountered, not just in appearance but in how they carried themselves. Their quiet confidence was both alluring and intimidating. Upon docking, Evelyn was greeted by a group of Valorian dignitaries, their faces calm, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light of the cruiser's docking bay. At the forefront of the delegation was a tall, striking figure, a male Valorian with hair like spun silver and eyes that shimmered like twin stars. His presence was magnetic, and Evelyn found herself captivated by him immediately. His name, she learned, was Alex, a Valorian ambassador with a reputation for wisdom and diplomacy. Captain Sharp, Alex's voice entered her mind as if carried on the winds of thought itself. It was not an intrusion but a soft, deliberate greeting. "It is an honor to meet you." Evelyn blinked in surprise, her mind suddenly flooded with the gentle resonance of his words. She had read about the Valorians' telepathic abilities, but experiencing it firsthand was different. Intimate, direct. "The honor is mine," she replied mentally, her voice steady despite the fluttering in her chest. "I've heard much about your people." Alex smiled, though it was not a smile that reached his lips. It was more a shift in the patterns of his skin, a glowing ripple that seemed to express both warmth and amusement. "I hope the tales are not too grand. We Valorians are simple beings after all." Their conversation continued on the mental plane, bypassing the need for words entirely. As they walked together toward the conference room, Evelyn couldn't help but be struck by the connection that seemed to spark between them. It wasn't just the telepathic communication, there was something deeper, something more primal that pulled her toward him. Alex, in turn, seemed equally intrigued, his thoughts occasionally brushing against hers in a way that was not invasive but rather inviting. The meeting itself was a blur, a mixture of diplomatic gestures, treaties, and formalities. But Evelyn found herself repeatedly drawn to Alex's presence. His wisdom was undeniable, his eloquence captivating, but it was his subtle yet undeniable aura of kindness that truly mesmerized her. As they discussed trade routes and defense pacts, there was an undercurrent of something more personal, something neither could ignore. By the time the meeting concluded, the room was filled with the hum of approval from both sides. The Valorians, as expected, were pleased with the arrangements, and humanity had gained another ally in the vast expanse of space. Yet, amidst the success, there was a lingering thought that neither Evelyn nor Alex could shake: their bond. As the Valorians prepared to depart, Alex reached out once more, his presence in her mind gentle, yet filled with an undeniable intensity. "You are unlike any human I have ever met, Captain Sharp," he said, the words forming in her mind like soft ripples on the surface of a pond. "There is a connection between us, a bond that I have never experienced before. Do you feel it as well?" Evelyn's heart raced as she considered his words. She could feel it, the undeniable pull toward him, a force that transcended the physical. But how could she admit it? How could she, a human, a captain bound by duty, allow herself to entertain the idea of a relationship with a being so far beyond her understanding? "Yes," she replied, her thoughts intertwining with his, "I feel it too." For a moment, silence hung between them, and Evelyn felt an emotion welling up inside her that she had not expected. Fear. Fear of the unknown, of the distance between their worlds, of the obstacles that lay ahead. The universe was vast, and though their bond was undeniable, so were the challenges they faced. Alex seemed to sense her hesitation, his voice in her mind soothing and patient. The distance between our worlds is not insurmountable, Captain. It is merely a challenge. But love, true love, transcends all boundaries, time, space, even species. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. She had heard the rumors about Valorian relationships, that they could form bonds that were eternal, unbreakable. Could it be possible for a human and an alien to share such a bond? Could their love truly survive the vastness of the universe? As the Elysium prepared to leave, Evelyn stood at the observation deck, gazing at the stars beyond. Alex's ship drifted gracefully in the distance, but she knew that their parting was only temporary. The questions remained unanswered for now. Could their love survive the challenges of the galaxy, or would it be swept away by the currents of space and time? Her mind was filled with the uncertainty of what the future held. One thing was certain: this was only the beginning of a love story that would span the stars. As the Elysium sailed through the infinite stretches of space, Captain Evelyn Sharp found herself grappling with the emotions that had been stirred during her brief encounter with Alex. The mission had been a success, diplomatic treaties were signed, trade agreements made, but those were the things of politics, not of the heart. Her mind drifted back to that moment when she and Alex had shared that unspoken bond, a connection that neither time nor distance could easily erase. Despite the vastness of the galaxy, Evelyn couldn't shake the feeling that the universe had shrunk in a way. The stars seemed a little less distant, and the silence of space felt a little less lonely. But the truth was, no matter how much she longed for him, she had responsibilities. She was the captain of the Elysium, and her duty to the crew, to Earth, and to the mission came first. For a time, Evelyn tried to push aside her thoughts of Alex. She buried herself in the work of leading her crew through the routines of intergalactic travel, navigating unknown systems, and overseeing delicate negotiations. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the feelings he had awakened within her. His presence, though far away, lingered in her mind like a soft, persistent melody. Back on the Valorian cruiser, Alex was similarly torn. The complexities of his people's traditions and the weight of his position as an ambassador weighed heavily on him. He had met many humans over the years, but none had captured his attention the way Evelyn had. He had read of human emotions, of the bond that could form between individuals, but it was different now. He could feel her thoughts in his mind, like faint whispers across the vast expanse of space. The connection they shared was unlike anything he had ever experienced. But the Valorian way of life was not built around love as humans understood it. They revered the idea of unity, of all life forms connecting on a deep, spiritual level, but they did not believe in attachments that could cause pain. Relationships between their kind were fluid, meant to be peaceful, and free from the constraints of possessiveness. For Alex, to form a bond with a human was an anomaly, an event that could have far-reaching consequences. He had spent the last few weeks attempting to meditate, to clear his thoughts and to maintain control over his emotions. He had succeeded in pushing the connection aside for a time. But no matter how much he tried to deny it, he could not forget Evelyn. Her courage, her intelligence, and her spirit had imprinted themselves upon his very being. And now, the absence of her presence was like a hollow space in his chest, an ache that no amount of logic could quell. The thought of her lingered in his mind as he stood before the Valorian Council, his telepathic communication with them as cool and detached as ever. They were discussing the latest developments in their alliance with humanity, how trade routes were progressing, how cultural exchanges were flourishing. But Alex's mind was elsewhere. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Evelyn's face, her eyes filled with questions and uncertainty. "You are distracted, Alex," a voice broke into his thoughts. It was Lyriel, the eldest among the Valorian Council, her voice a calm ripple across his consciousness. "Is something troubling you?" Alex blinked, realizing that the council's discussion had faltered in his absence. "Nothing, Lyriel," he replied, his voice calm but distant. "I am simply reflecting." Reflecting on the human? Lyriel's question was gentle, but there was an edge to it, an undercurrent of concern. He hesitated, unsure of how to explain what he was feeling. The Valorians were not ones to shy away from difficult conversations, but matters of the heart were complicated, even for them. "Yes," he admitted finally. "Her name is Evelyn Sharp. I believe I have formed a connection with her." There was a long silence in the room as the council absorbed his words. Finally, Lyriel spoke again, her thoughts soft yet insistent. Connections are not without consequence, Alex. Our people have chosen to remain detached from such bonds because they can lead to pain, an unnecessary entanglement. I know, Alex said quietly. But this is different. I feel it. This bond is unlike anything I have ever known. It is not just an emotional attachment. It is something deeper, something that transcends what we are. The council murmured amongst themselves, their thoughts carefully measured. Lyriel's response was calm, but there was a sharpness to her words. You must consider what this will mean for your people, Alex. A bond with a human could have far-reaching implications, not just for you but for us all. The Valorians are known for our wisdom, our unity. If you allow yourself to be led by emotions, you risk disrupting the delicate balance we have spent centuries cultivating. I understand, Alex replied, though his voice was filled with a quiet defiance. But I cannot simply ignore what I feel. Lyriel remained silent for a moment, her presence strong and steady in his mind. Finally she spoke again. You must decide, Alex. If this bond is truly as strong as you say, you will have to choose between your duty to your people and your heart. Alex felt a wave of uncertainty crash over him. What could he do? Was he willing to risk everything for a love that might not be accepted by either his people or her own? The decision weighed heavily on him, and for the first time, Alex questioned everything he had believed about love. Back on the Elysium, Evelyn had reached a similar conclusion. It had been a few months since she last saw Alex, but she couldn't ignore the way he had affected her. The thought of him still haunted her, filling her mind with questions. Could she pursue something so dangerous, something that might ruin both their lives? Was it worth the risk? The stars outside the observation deck seemed distant again, and the vast emptiness of space pressed down on her shoulders. She had her duties, her crew, her mission. But was that all she was? Would she let the stars pass her by, forever haunted by the memory of a connection that could never be? The answer, Evelyn realized, was no. She had to know if there was something real between them. She couldn't continue pretending that she didn't feel the pull of the stars toward him. With determination she made her decision. She would reach out. She would send a message, through the long channels of space, across the void that separated their worlds, and let Alex know that she hadn't forgotten. That she couldn't forget. And so, the message was sent, the distance between them narrowing with every passing moment. Whatever the future held, Evelyn Sharp was ready to find out. The days that followed Alex's message were filled with a strange, unshakable excitement for Captain Evelyn Sharp. She found herself waking each morning with a renewed sense of purpose, her thoughts constantly drifting back to the Valorian ambassador. The message he had sent had filled her with both hope and apprehension. They had both confessed their feelings, but the true test was still ahead. How would they make this work across the vast expanse of space? Her responsibilities aboard the Elysium had never been more demanding, as the crew continued their exploration of distant star systems. Yet Evelyn found herself distracted. Her thoughts often strayed to Alex, imagining what he was doing, what his life was like in a world so different from her own. And though their communication was primarily through their messages, the bond between them had deepened. They had exchanged thoughts, feelings, even dreams, each interaction forging a deeper connection. But Evelyn knew that, despite the comfort their telepathic bond offered, there was only so much that could be shared through mere words. She needed more. She needed to see him, to feel his presence in the same space, not just across the stars. Yet she couldn't ignore the reality that their paths, while briefly crossing, were still worlds apart. They were from different species, different cultures. The very laws of physics that governed their existence stood as an obstacle between them. "Captain, you've been distant lately," Lieutenant Kara Thompson, her first officer, said one evening after a long shift. "Is everything all right?" Evelyn looked up from the star charts on her console. Kara's expression was filled with concern, but Evelyn smiled reassuringly. "I'm fine, Lieutenant," she said, her voice betraying none of the turmoil she felt. "Just a bit distracted. The stress of command, you know how it is." Kara didn't look convinced, but she nodded. "If you need to talk, I'm here. You've been through a lot lately, and if there's something on your mind, you know where to find me." Evelyn appreciated the gesture, but she couldn't share her thoughts with Kara. Not yet. Her feelings for Alex were too new, too raw, to discuss with anyone. She wasn't even sure how to make sense of it herself. "Thanks, Kara. I'll keep that in mind." As Kara left her quarters, Evelyn returned to the console, staring out into the inky blackness of space. The silence of the universe outside felt overwhelming, yet at the same time, it seemed to pulse with possibility. She had a duty to the Elysium and its crew, but Alex's words, their shared bond, reminded her that there was something greater waiting for her. She just had to take the leap. Alex, too, was caught between duty and desire. The Valorians had always prioritized unity and logic, placing the good of their species above individual emotions. But Alex had never been able to fully embrace that way of thinking, not when it came to Evelyn. The bond between them felt undeniable, a force that was more than just a fleeting emotional connection. It was as though their souls had been intertwined long before their bodies ever met. He spent his days in the Valorian embassy, working on the diplomatic matters that kept him occupied, yet he found it impossible to focus. Every moment that passed without communication from Evelyn felt like an eternity. It wasn't just the distance between them, it was the tension, the unspoken understanding that their love was a forbidden thing, that it could break apart at any moment. He had spoken with his council, trying to gauge their opinions on the matter. They had remained cautious, reminding him of the importance of Valorian traditions and the responsibilities he carried as an ambassador. Love between species was rare, and the potential consequences were not to be underestimated. But Alex couldn't ignore the pull he felt toward her. His people valued peace, but peace without love, without connection, felt hollow. How could he continue to serve his people when his heart was with her? He had decided to take a bold step. The next time the Elysium docked with the Valorian cruiser, he would go to her. He would bridge the distance between them face to face and see if they could forge something real. The decision was not made lightly. He knew that their bond would challenge the foundations of both their civilizations. But he couldn't live a half-life, not with Evelyn so firmly etched into his thoughts. He wanted to know if what they had was just a momentary connection or if it could stand the test of time and space. The message he sent to Evelyn was simple but filled with the weight of his resolve. Evelyn, I cannot stay in this silence any longer. I'm ready to come to you. I will not let our bond fade away into the darkness of space. If you are willing, I will be there soon. When Evelyn received Alex's message, her heart raced. She had been hoping, but she had also been afraid to expect too much. His words were the confirmation she had been longing for, the next step, the one that would bring them together in a way that went beyond words. He was coming to her. The thought both exhilarated and terrified her. There were so many obstacles between them. The practicalities of intergalactic travel, the cultural barriers, the fact that they were two beings from completely different worlds. She was human. He was not. The realities of their differences had never felt so real, so significant. And yet, in the quiet moments when she closed her eyes, she could feel him. Not as a distant voice, but as if he were right beside her. The connection between them had only deepened in their time apart, and the idea of finally meeting him face to face filled her with a mixture of anticipation and dread. As the Elysium prepared for its next mission, Evelyn found herself more focused than ever. But her mind was still filled with the thought of Alex and the uncertain future that lay ahead for them. If their bond was as strong as she believed it was, they would have to be prepared for the consequences. And even if it wasn't, Evelyn couldn't deny that her heart was already committed to him. Weeks later, the Elysium received a transmission from the Valorian cruiser, indicating that Alex's vessel was preparing to dock. The crew buzzed with anticipation as the ship aligned with the Elysium. It would be their first face-to-face meeting, and Evelyn's thoughts raced with 1,000 questions that had haunted her since she first met him. Was it truly love that had drawn them together, or was it the pull of something more dangerous? Could they really overcome the obstacles that lay between them? Would their bond survive the reality of their separate worlds? As the docking bay doors opened, and Alex stepped onto the Elysium, all of Evelyn's questions faded. Standing before her was not just the Valorian ambassador, but the man she had come to love. The man who had crossed the stars for her. And for the first time, Evelyn felt as though nothing else mattered. The moment the docking bay doors slid open, Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't just the dramatic entrance of the Valorian cruiser. No, it was the weight of what was about to happen. Alex stood at the threshold, the figure she had imagined in her mind 1,000 times now materializing before her. Their bond, which had been formed in the space between thoughts and dreams, was now tangible, real. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat as she took in the sight of him. Alex was everything she remembered from their brief encounters. Tall and striking, his features sharp yet elegant, with an aura of quiet confidence that seemed to radiate even in his stillness. His silvery blue skin shimmered in the artificial lighting, and his amber eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that sent a jolt through her chest. For a moment, the rest of the world seemed to vanish. All the worries, the responsibilities, the questions about their future, they all faded into the background. In this instant, there was only her and Alex. The pull between them was undeniable, and the connection she had felt through their telepathic bond now seemed to transcend every barrier they had once believed in. Evelyn took a step forward, her voice breaking the silence. Alex, it's really you? His lips curved into a soft, knowing smile, and his voice was a whisper in the vastness of the docking bay. Yes, Evelyn. It is truly me. The Valorian ambassador, now no longer just a presence in her mind, walked toward her with purpose, his steps measured but eager. His golden robe shimmered softly as he approached, and despite his graceful movements, there was an undeniable urgency in his eyes, a silent declaration that they were about to face something that neither of them could fully comprehend. Without thinking, Evelyn closed the distance between them, her hands reaching out. It was as though her body had already made the decision for her, and in that single moment she needed to feel the warmth of his presence. She needed to know that this wasn't a dream. When their hands met, the world around them seemed to blur. Alex's touch was cool, his skin soft but firm as his fingers interlaced with hers. Evelyn could feel a warmth radiate from him, a sensation that was both comforting and electrifying. For the first time in what felt like ages, Evelyn felt whole. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stood there, connected in a way that transcended language, species, and even time itself. Evelyn's breath steadied, and she closed her eyes, feeling the bond between them grow stronger, more pronounced. Alex finally spoke, his voice low but filled with an emotion she couldn't quite name. I have dreamed of this, Evelyn. Of standing here with you, seeing you in the flesh. Our connection is more than I could have ever anticipated. Evelyn's lips parted as she looked up at him, her heart racing. I've dreamed of this too, she confessed. But, how do we make this work? There are so many things between us. Our worlds, our species. We're so different. Alex nodded, his gaze soft but resolute. I know. The distance between us, both literal and metaphorical, is not something to be taken lightly. But when I look at you, Evelyn, I see only what is possible. Not what divides us but what unites us. His words, simple yet profound, filled Evelyn's chest with a warmth that was almost overwhelming. She had always feared that the vastness of space, the differences between their cultures, and the weight of their responsibilities would drive a wedge between them. But standing here with Alex, feeling the depth of their connection in the physical world as much as the mental, she realized that perhaps those barriers didn't matter as much as she had believed. But what if we can't overcome them? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. What if our love isn't enough to bridge that gap? Alex's gaze softened, and he stepped closer, bringing their bodies a fraction of an inch apart. Then we will face them together. No matter what comes our way, I will not let go of what we share. I am willing to take that risk if you are. Evelyn's heart fluttered in her chest. There was so much uncertainty ahead, so many things they had yet to understand, but in that moment she knew one thing for certain. She could never turn away from him. She had already chosen him in her mind and in her heart. And no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would face them beside him. A soft hum from the communication console interrupted their quiet moment, and both of them turned toward it. Evelyn's fingers lingered for a moment on Alex's hand before she stepped away, her thoughts returning to the present. Evelyn, we've just received a transmission from Earth. Kara's voice crackled through the console. It's urgent. They need to speak with you immediately. Evelyn sighed, her mind already shifting back to her duties. She turned to Alex with an apologetic smile. Duty calls. I'll be right back. Alex nodded, though his eyes remained fixed on her. I understand. We will have time later to talk. Evelyn stepped away, heading toward the console with a sense of reluctance. As she interacted with the communication system, she could feel Alex's presence behind her, unwavering, supportive. She took a deep breath and keyed in the message to Earth's command. Captain Sharp, a familiar voice, Admiral Harris, came through. His expression was grim. We've encountered a serious situation. A rogue faction has gained control of a major sector, and we need your assistance. The political situation is volatile, and we need to send a fleet to stabilize the region. The Valorians may be able to assist, but there are complications. We need to resolve this swiftly. Are you ready to respond? Evelyn's mind raced. The stakes had just become infinitely higher. The mission she had been dreading had finally arrived. The future of her relationship with Alex, and the survival of their species, was now more uncertain than ever. She had just found a connection worth fighting for, and now the universe was presenting her with a challenge that could tear them apart. Understood, Admiral, Evelyn replied, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions within her. We'll be ready to depart at once. As the transmission ended, Evelyn stood still for a moment, her mind swirling with questions. She turned to Alex, who had been quietly watching her the entire time. We have no time to waste, she said, her voice firm. The mission has just escalated. We'll have to work together if we're going to make this work. Are you with me? Alex stepped forward, his amber eyes filled with determination. I will always be with you, Evelyn. No matter where this journey takes us. And just like that, with their hearts and minds united, they faced the uncertain path ahead. Together. The silence in the command center was deafening as the crew of the Elysium worked in unison, preparing for the mission ahead. They had received the orders from Earth Command and the details of the rogue faction's activities. It was clear that this was not just a diplomatic issue, it was a full-scale crisis, one that could spiral into war if left unchecked. But the stakes felt even higher to Captain Evelyn Sharp, not just for the safety of the galaxy, but for the uncertain future she now faced with Alex. Beside her, Alex stood at his usual poised, calm self, his amber eyes scanning the digital maps of the conflict zone projected on the screen. His presence, though silent, was a grounding force. Despite the tension in the air, Evelyn couldn't help but steal glances at him as she issued orders. In their brief time together, he had proven to be an invaluable ally, both in terms of diplomacy and military strategy. His Valorian intellect was sharp, and his understanding of the delicate balance between species made him a critical asset in the impending negotiations. Yet even as she worked beside him, Evelyn knew that the larger question loomed. What would happen after the mission? What would happen when the dust settled and the universe returned to its rhythm, its familiar chaos? They had both taken a risk, crossing the boundaries of species and politics for something personal. It wasn't just the Elysium that stood on the edge of a precipice, it was their bond. She wasn't naive enough to believe that their love would be easily accepted, even if they survived this crisis. And yet, despite the uncertainty, there was something undeniably true about the connection they shared. She could feel it every time they spoke, every time their minds touched. A soft beep brought Evelyn's attention back to the present. A new transmission had arrived, this time from the rogue faction's leader. The channel was encrypted, a warning that this would not be a friendly conversation. Prepare for anything, Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. We're about to speak with the enemy? Alex met her gaze, his expression unreadable, though she could sense the quiet determination in his presence. We will handle this together. Evelyn nodded, her heart swelling with both admiration and uncertainty. There was no one she would trust more in this moment than him, but she couldn't ignore the fact that every decision they made now could impact the fragile thread between their worlds. The rogue leader's face appeared on the holoscreen, a grizzled figure with dark eyes and a smug smile, dressed in the garb of a militaristic faction that had broken away from an unstable alliance. The tension was palpable as Evelyn took the lead. Greetings, she said, her voice clear and commanding. I am Captain Evelyn Sharp of the Elysium, and I represent the United Forces of Earth and the Valorian Empire. We are here to discuss your actions and the future of the sector you've taken control of. The rogue leader's laugh echoed through the room. A united force, huh? I'm sure the Valorians would love to talk about unity, he said, his tone mocking. But this is no longer your sector to control, Captain. You'll soon find that we don't answer to anyone, least of all to the so-called diplomats of the stars. Evelyn's jaw tightened. She could feel Alex's presence beside her, his mind steady and calm, offering a silent anchor. This was more than a diplomatic discussion, it was a battle of wills. We've come to offer a choice, Evelyn continued, her voice unwavering. You can either stand down and allow peace to return to the sector, or you can face the consequences of your actions. The rogue leader's grin deepened, but there was a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. You think you can intimidate me? You and your pretty little Valorian playmate? Your empire may be powerful, but it's not invincible. Evelyn knew the threat behind his words was real. The rogue faction had the resources to wage a destructive war, and they were clearly not intimidated by the might of either Earth or Valoris. But she wasn't about to back down. We don't want war, Evelyn said, but we will not let you hold the galaxy hostage. The choice is yours. A long, tense silence followed, broken only by the leader's slow nod. You have more guts than I gave you credit for, Captain. But understand this, your peaceful resolution is a lie. War is coming whether you like it or not. Without another word, the transmission was cut off. The room remained still for a beat as the implications of the conversation settled in. We've underestimated their resolve, Alex said, his voice even but firm. This will not be resolved without further action. Evelyn nodded. It seems we're past the point of negotiation. We'll have to engage. The question now is how far we push. The answer to that was clear, too many lives were at stake for them to turn back now. It was no longer about diplomacy alone, it was about ensuring the survival of their civilizations. "Captain, we're ready to move," Kara's voice came through the comm system, breaking the tension. "We've analyzed their fleet, and we're prepared to intercept." "Prepare the fleet," Evelyn responded. This is it. The battle that ensued was unlike anything Evelyn had ever faced. The rogue faction's ships, heavily fortified and deadly, clashed against the Elysium and its Valorian allies in a fierce dogfight among the stars. The sound of the laser fire and explosions reverberated throughout the ship, and Evelyn could feel the weight of every decision, every move she made. Alex, at her side, was a calm force amidst the chaos. His knowledge of warfare, his understanding of the enemy's tactics, made him an invaluable asset in the heat of the moment. But even as their fleets clashed, Evelyn's mind kept returning to the one question that hung over them all. How could they ensure peace when every move they made seemed to drive them deeper into conflict? With every passing minute, the battle became more intense. The Elysium fired its weapons with precision, each strike designed to disable rather than destroy, but the rogue faction was relentless. Ships exploded around them and the stakes grew higher. "Captain, the rogue leader's flagship is directly ahead," Kara reported. "We can take it out now. It's the key to ending this." Evelyn's pulse quickened. The decision was hers, and it was one that could tip the scales. If they disabled the flagship, the rogue faction would lose their leader, and with it, much of their power. But it could also escalate the conflict into something even more destructive. "We're doing it," Evelyn said, her voice steady. "Target their engines. Disrupt their command." The Elysium's cannons fired once more, and with a precise hit, the rogue flagship was crippled. The remaining enemy ships faltered, and within minutes they began to retreat. The battle was over. As the Elysium and its allies stood victorious, the tension in the command room slowly began to ease. But Evelyn knew that while the physical battle was won, the war for lasting peace was far from over. The rogue faction would lick their wounds and regroup, but they had dealt a blow to their enemies that would take time to recover from. But amid the chaos, Evelyn found Alex standing beside her, his hand gently brushing hers. Their connection, despite the danger and violence, had remained strong. She had never realized how much their bond would mean in moments like this, when the weight of the universe seemed too much to bear. "We did it," Alex said quietly, his voice a gentle balm to the rawness of the moment. Evelyn looked up at him, her heart swelling with more than just gratitude. It was love, pure and undeniable. She had made it through the battle. And she had made it through with him by her side. But now came the real question: what would the future hold for them? The universe was vast and their bond was fragile. They had made it through this crisis, but what lay ahead? As she stood beside Alex, the answer didn't seem so important. Because in that moment, she knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The end. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more exciting HFY stories. Your support means the world to us. And make sure to tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Stay tuned for our next adventure, and until then, keep exploring the stars. See you in the next video.